Imagine a world where a tiny band of rebels sparked a war against the mightiest empire on earth. An empire so vast, its king believed he was a god among men. This wasn't a movie. It was the dawn of one of history's most epic conflicts, the Greco-Persian Wars. It's a story of how freedom itself was put on trial. It all began not in Greece, but across the sea, in a region called Ionia. Here, Greek cities had been swallowed by the colossal Persian Empire. For years they simmered under Persian rule, paying taxes to a distant king. But in 499 BC they had enough. Led by the city of Miletus, the Ionians revolted, lighting a fire that would soon engulf the known world. They turned to their mainland cousins for help. Sparta, the militaristic powerhouse, said no. But Athens, a burgeoning democracy, saw a kindred spirit in the rebels' fight for freedom. They sent 20 ships, a small gesture, but one that would have monumental consequences. The Athenian-backed rebels marched on the Persian regional capital Sardis and burned it to the ground. When the Persian king, Darius the Great, heard the news, he was enraged. He reportedly had a servant whisper in his ear 3 times a day, "Master, remember the Athenians." His vengeance would be swift and terrible. He crushed the Ionian Revolt, but his eyes were now fixed on the Greek mainland. He saw a collection of bickering city-states, ripe for conquest. He wouldn't just punish Athens, he would absorb all of Greece into his empire. A massive Persian fleet sailed across the Aegean, hopping from island to island, demanding submission. Those who resisted were crushed. Their destination was a small bay just 26 miles from Athens, a place called Marathon. The Athenians were terrified. They were a city of poets and politicians, not warriors like the Spartans. They sent a runner, Phidippides, on a desperate 150-mile journey to Sparta to beg for help. The Spartans agreed, but there was a problem. They were in the middle of a sacred religious festival and couldn't march until the next full moon. Athens was on its own. 10,000 Athenian citizen soldiers, known as hoplites, marched out to face a Persian force more than twice their size. The Persian cavalry, their most feared weapon, was nowhere to be seen, possibly foraging or reboarding the ships for a direct assault on the undefended city of Athens. The Athenian general Miltiades saw a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. He knew a conventional fight was suicide. The Persian center was strong, their archers deadly. If you're enjoying this tale of ancient warfare, make sure to subscribe for more hidden history. Miltiades intentionally weakened his own center and packed his flanks with his best troops. He then ordered his men to do the unthinkable, run. This charge minimized their casualties and crashed into the Persian lines with shocking force. The weak Athenian center buckled and began to fall back, just as Miltiades had planned. This drew the best Persian troops inward, deeper into the trap. As the Persian center pushed forward, the powerful Greek flanks, which had defeated the weaker Persian wings, wheeled inward and slammed into the Persian rear. The invaders were now surrounded, caught in a brilliant double envelopment. Panic set in. The Persians broke and fled back to their ships, with the Athenians chasing them into the sea. The battle was a stunning, almost unbelievable victory for Athens. Against all odds, a small democracy had defeated a superpower. But they knew this was only the beginning. King Darius died before he could have his revenge. But his son, Xerxes, inherited his father's ambition and his hatred for the Greeks. He wasn't going to make the same mistakes. Xerxes spent years amassing the largest invasion force the world had ever seen. The ancient historian Herodotus claimed his army numbered in the millions, a force so large it drank rivers dry as it marched. While that's an exaggeration, modern estimates still put the army at around 150 to 200,000 soldiers, supported by a fleet of over 1,000 ships. This was an army designed not just to conquer, but to overwhelm and terrify. In 480 BC, 10 years after Marathon, this unstoppable tide of humanity crossed into Europe over a pontoon bridge built across the Hellespont Strait. This time, the Greek city-states were united. Even the Spartans were ready. They formed a Hellenic League, and Sparta, with its legendary military prowess, was given command of the allied forces. Their strategy was to find a natural choke point to negate the Persians' overwhelming numbers. They chose a narrow coastal pass in northern Greece, a place where the mountains met the sea. It was called Thermopylae, the Hot Gates. Here, a small Greek force of about 7,000 men, led by the Spartan king Leonidas and his personal bodyguard of 300 elite warriors, prepared to make their stand. For 3 days, they performed a miracle. The narrow pass became a meat grinder. The Greeks, with their longer spears, heavier armor, and the impenetrable phalanx formation, held off wave after wave of Persian assaults. Xerxes threw his best troops, the elite immortals, into the fray, but even they were cut down. The Persian king reportedly leaped from his throne 3 times in terror, watching his finest warriors get slaughtered. The Greeks were proving that free men fighting for their homes were superior to the subjects of a tyrant. But their heroic stand was doomed. A local Greek trader, seeking a reward from Xerxes, revealed a secret mountain path that led behind the Greek lines. When Leonidas learned he was about to be surrounded, he made a fateful decision. He dismissed the bulk of the Greek army, ordering them to retreat and prepare for the next battle. He and his 300 Spartans, along with a few hundred other loyal Greeks, would stay and fight to the death. They would buy the rest of Greece precious time. Their last stand was an act of legendary sacrifice, an inspiration that would echo through eternity. They fought until their spears shattered, then fought with their swords, and finally with their bare hands and teeth before being overwhelmed. While Leonidas and his men bought time on land, the Athenian-led navy was fighting its own desperate battle at sea. The Athenian leader, Themistocles, was a political genius. He had convinced his city to use a recent silver strike to build a massive fleet of new warships called triremes. He knew the war would be won or lost on the water. They reached Athens, found it abandoned, and burned the city and its sacred Acropolis to the ground. The Greek cause seemed lost. The allied fleet was cornered in the narrow straits of Salamis near the ruins of Athens. The other Greek commanders wanted to retreat and defend the Peloponnesian Peninsula, abandoning central Greece entirely. But Themistocles knew this was their last chance. He needed to force a battle in the narrow straits, where the heavier, more maneuverable Greek ships could ram and outfight the more numerous but clumsy Persian vessels. To ensure the Persians took the bait, he resorted to a masterful trick. He sent a loyal slave to Xerxes, pretending to be a traitor. The message claimed that the Greeks were panicked and planning to flee overnight. It urged Xerxes to block the straits and attack immediately to crush them once and for all. Xerxes, arrogant and overconfident, fell for it completely. He ordered his fleet to enter the narrow straits of Salamis, trapping the Greek navy. He even had a throne set up on a nearby hill to watch his glorious victory. But as his massive fleet crowded into the confined waters, they lost all formation. They became a chaotic, tangled mess. The Greek ships, hiding in the hidden coves, suddenly burst out. They were faster, heavier, and their crews were fighting for their very existence, with their families watching from the nearby shore. The Greek triremes, armed with bronze rams, smashed into the sides of the Persian ships, sinking them or shearing off their oars. The battle became a brutal, close-quarters brawl. The superior seamanship of the Greeks and the cramped conditions turned the Persians' numerical advantage into a fatal weakness. The sea ran red. By the end of the day, the Persian navy was shattered. Xerxes watched in horror as his invincible fleet was annihilated. His sea lanes were cut, his supply line was threatened, and his grand invasion was crippled. He fled back to Persia, leaving a large portion of his army behind under the command of his general Mardonius. The following year, 479 BC, saw the final act of this epic drama. The remaining Persian army faced the full might of the united Greek city-states, led by the largest Spartan army ever assembled, at the Battle of Plataea. It was a brutal, decisive land battle. The discipline and training of the Spartan hoplites proved unstoppable. The Persian forces were crushed and Mardonius was killed. On the very same day, across the Aegean Sea at Mycale, the remnants of the Persian fleet were destroyed by the Greek navy. The threat was over. The Persian invasion had been utterly defeated. The Greco-Persian Wars changed the world. This victory ushered in the golden age of Athens. Flush with confidence and power, Athens formed the Delian League, an alliance of city-states that soon became an Athenian empire. This period saw an explosion of culture, philosophy, art, and democracy, with thinkers like Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle laying the foundations of Western thought. The Parthenon was built on the ruins of the Acropolis. The idea that a collection of free states could defeat a despotic empire became a cornerstone of Western identity. The stories of Marathon, the sacrifice of the 300 at Thermopylae, and the genius of Salamis have inspired generations. They are more than just history. They are a testament to the idea that a few brave people fighting for an ideal can indeed change the course of history. Subscribe to uncover more stories history tried to hide.